My name is Marta, and I'm 32 years old. I work as a corporate accounts manager at a large sports equipment company in the city center. It's a decent job, it pays the bills, and I'm good at what I do. But this story isn't really about my job, it's about my family and how they betrayed me in the worst way possible. First, I need to tell you about my living situation. 5 years ago, when I was 27, my parents offered me their apartment. Well, not exactly offered, they wanted me to rent it from them. The apartment originally belonged to my father's grandmother, and he inherited it years ago. The place was close to my office, within walking distance, which was perfect for me. Marta, we've been thinking, my mother said at the time. You could live in Grandma's old apartment. We'll only charge you three-quarters of what you'd pay anywhere else in the neighborhood. It didn't surprise me that they wanted to charge me rent. That's just how my parents are, especially when it comes to me versus my twin brother, Pablo. We were born on the same day, but you'd never know it from how they treat us. Pablo has always been their golden boy, their prized heir, their everything. When we were kids, they bought him expensive toys for his birthday, while I got books from the discount section. When we graduated high school, they threw him a big party with all his friends. I got a greeting card. When Pablo wanted to go to college, they paid for everything. When I wanted to go, they told me I could take out student loans like everyone else. So yeah, paying rent to my own parents, totally normal in my family. The apartment was in terrible condition when I moved in. The floors were covered in old, grimy carpet that probably hadn't been cleaned in decades. The walls were a hideous yellow that made everything look sickly. The bathroom was falling apart, and don't even get me started on the kitchen. But the location was perfect, so I took it. Over the next 5 years, I basically rebuilt that place from scratch. I discussed every change with my mother first, just as she wanted. I ripped out the old carpet and installed beautiful laminate flooring in the living room. I painted every wall in the apartment. I replaced all the plumbing because half the pipes were leaking. I bought a new dishwasher, a new fridge, a new stove, even new electrical outlets throughout the apartment. I furnished the entire place with my own money. My parents would occasionally stop by to check on their investment, as my father liked to say. They'd walk around, nodding approvingly at all the work I'd done. "You're really fixing this place up," my mother would say. "It's going to be worth a lot more when you're done." I didn't mind the work. In fact, I enjoyed making the place my own. It felt good to have a space that was mine, even if I was paying rent for it. Then, about a year ago, everything changed. I was 31 and feeling pretty settled in my life. I had my job, my apartment, my routine. That's when my parents dropped a bombshell. "Marta, we need to talk," my father said when they came over. He looked serious, which was never a good sign. "What's going on?" I asked, setting down my coffee. "We're in trouble with the mortgage on this place," my mother said. "We owe the bank 30,000 euros and we can't pay it. The bank is threatening to foreclose." I stared at them. "So what are you asking me to do?" "We need you to pay the 30,000 euros, my father said. "We know it's a lot, but think of it as an investment. This apartment will be yours someday anyway." "It'll be mine," I repeated. "Of course," my mother said. "You're our daughter. We're not going to leave you with nothing. Pablo will get the house when we're gone, and you'll get this apartment. You've already put so much work into it." I had some savings built up from years of working and living relatively frugally. 30,000 euros was most of what I had, but if it meant I'd eventually own the place I'd been fixing up for years, it seemed worth it. "You promise this apartment will be mine?" I asked. "Absolutely," my father said. "We're not going to forget everything you've done for this place. You've made it your home." So I did it. I transferred 30,000 euros to my parents to pay off their mortgage debt. I trusted them completely. After all, they were my parents. Why would they lie to me about something like that? I continued living in the apartment, paying rent, maintaining the place. Everything seemed normal. My parents never mentioned the money again, and I assumed that meant everything was settled. The apartment would be mine eventually, and I'd already invested so much in it that it felt like mine anyway. 2 weeks ago, Pablo called me out of the blue. I was at work, finishing some paperwork, when my phone rang. "Hey Marta, I've got great news," he said, and I could hear the excitement in his voice. "What's up?" I asked, only half paying attention as I tried to finish a client proposal. "Sarah and I are getting engaged. The engagement party is in 2 weeks at her parents' house. You're invited." I dropped my pen. Sarah Martinez had been Pablo's girlfriend for about 2 years. I knew her well because we'd all gone to the same high school. She was in our class, actually. A nice girl back then, smart, funny, down to earth. "That's amazing, Pablo. I'm so happy for you guys," I said, and I meant it. Despite everything with my parents, I genuinely cared about my brother. "Sarah's great. You two are perfect for each other." "Thanks, sis. That means a lot coming from you. I know mom and dad are over the moon about it." Of course they were. Their golden boy was marrying a nice girl from a good family. This was probably the best news they'd gotten all year. "I'm really excited for you too," I said. "I'll be there. I wouldn't miss it." "Great. I'll text you the details. Love you, Marta." "Love you too, Pablo." The 2 weeks flew by. I even went shopping for a nice dress for the engagement party. I wanted to look good for Pablo and Sarah. I picked something elegant but not too flashy. I didn't want to outshine the bride-to-be. The party was at Sarah's parents' house in a nice neighborhood about 30 minutes from the city center. When I arrived, there were already about 40 people there. Sarah's family, some of our old high school friends, relatives I recognized from various family gatherings over the years. Marta, Sarah ran over to me as soon as I walked in. She looked radiant, absolutely glowing with happiness. "I'm so glad you could come. Congratulations," I said, giving her a big hug. "I'm so happy for you and Pablo. You're going to be great together." "Thanks, that means a lot coming from you. You know Pablo better than anyone." I found Pablo by the food table, talking with some of his college friends. He looked handsome in his navy suit, his hair perfectly styled. Our parents had definitely gotten their money's worth on that expensive haircut they paid for last month. The party was going well. People were laughing, eating, drinking, sharing stories about Pablo and Sarah. I was actually having a good time catching up with old friends and enjoying the celebration. Then, about an hour into the party, my father cleared his throat loudly and called for everyone's attention. "Excuse me, everyone," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "If you could give me your attention for a moment." The room fell silent, and all eyes turned to my father. He stood in the center of the living room, my mother by his side, both of them beaming with pride. "Margaret and I wanted to take a moment to say how proud we are of our son, Pablo," my father continued. "He's always been such a wonderful boy, and seeing him so happy with Sarah just fills our hearts with joy." People murmured their approval, smiling and nodding. This is nice, I thought, a bit sappy but nice. "We have a very special engagement gift for Pablo," my father said, reaching into his jacket pocket. "Something to show how much we love him and how proud we are of the man he's become." He pulled out an envelope and handed it to Pablo. My brother's face lit up, but he didn't seem surprised. In fact, he looked like he'd been expecting it. "Go ahead, son, open it." Pablo opened the envelope and pulled out some official-looking documents. He glanced at them quickly, then looked up at our parents with a huge smile. "Mom, Dad, this is incredible," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you so much. I can't believe you're doing this." "What is it?" someone called from the crowd. My mother stepped forward, practically glowing with pride. "It's the deed to an apartment in the city center, the same one Pablo's sister has been living in for the past few years. We're giving it to Pablo and Sarah as a wedding gift." The room erupted in congratulations and applause. People were clapping, cheering, telling Pablo how lucky he was to have such generous parents. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. My vision blurred around the edges, and I had to grab the back of a chair to steady myself. The apartment, my apartment. The one I'd been paying rent for over 5 years. The one I'd completely renovated with my own money. The one I'd paid 30,000 euros to save from foreclosure just a year ago. The one my parents had promised would be mine someday. They were giving it to Pablo. "This is such a wonderful gift," Sarah was saying, looking at the documents in Pablo's hands. "We're so grateful. We've been talking about finding our own place, and this is just perfect." "Pablo deserves it," my father said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "He's getting married, starting a family soon, hopefully. He and Sarah need their own place to build their life together." I looked at my parents, hopping to catch their eyes, hopping for some kind of explanation or apology. But when they saw me starring, they just smiled and shrugged like it was the most natural thing in the world. That's when my Aunt Carmen, my mother's sister, spoke up from across the room. "Hold on," she said, her voice cutting through the celebrations. "What about Marta? Hasn't she been living in that apartment for years?" The room went quiet. Everyone turned to look at me, then at my parents. I felt my face burning with embarrassment, but I couldn't say anything. My father shrugged casually. "Marta will have to move out, of course. We've let her live there for 5 years. I think that's been pretty generous." "She's an adult," my mother added. "She can find her own place. There are plenty of apartments for rent in the city." I could have told everyone the truth. I could have stood up and announced that I hadn't been living there for free, as my parents were making it sound. I could have explained that I'd paid rent every month, that I'd renovated the entire place with my own money, that I'd given them 30,000 euros last year to save the apartment from foreclosure. I could have told everyone that my parents had promised the apartment would be mine someday, but I didn't do any of that. I just sat there for another 30 minutes, watching my brother and his fiancée accept congratulations for their wonderful gift, watching my parents bask in the praise for being such generous people. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I got up quietly, grabbed my purse, and walked out of Sarah's parents' house. No one even noticed I was leaving. The ride back to the apartment was a blur. I kept replaying the whole scene in my head, trying to make sense of what had just happened. How could my parents do this to me? How could they humiliate me like that in front of everyone? When I got home, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my couch, staring at the walls I'd painted myself. Everything in this place represented years of my life, my money, my work. And now Pablo was going to get it all handed to him on a silver platter. That's when my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Pablo. "Move out immediately. You have 2 days. 2 days. Not even a week, not even a conversation. Just a cold text message from my own brother telling me to get out of the place I'd called home for 5 years. I stared at the message for a long time, feeling a rage building inside me that I'd never felt before. They thought they could throw me out like trash. They thought they could steal 30,000 euros from me, humiliate me in front of everyone, and then kick me out with 2 days' notice. I called my friend Sophia. We'd been friends since college, and she was one of the few people who knew how difficult my family could be. "Hey Marta, how was the engagement party?" she asked when she picked up. "Sophia, I need a favor," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can I stay with you for a while? I need to find a new place to live." "Sure, but what happened? Are you okay?" "I'll explain later. I just need a place to go for a few days while I figure things out." "Actually, you know what? My brother Ricardo moved to Europe for work last month. His house is empty. You can stay there as long as you need. No rent, just pay the utilities." I almost cried with relief. After hanging up, I sat there thinking about what to do next. Then an idea started forming in my mind. If my parents wanted to play dirty, I could play dirty too. I called a handyman service and asked them to come first thing in the morning. "I need you to disconnect and remove all the appliances," I told them. "The dishwasher, the fridge, the stove, everything. I also need you to remove all the electrical outlets and plumbing fixtures." The guy on the phone sounded confused. "Ma'am, that's going to leave the place pretty empty." "That's exactly what I want," I said. "I bought all those things with my own money, so I'm taking them with me." The next day, the handyman crew arrived early and got to work. They disconnected the dishwasher, unplugged the fridge, removed the stove, took out every single electrical outlet I'd installed, removed the new bathroom fixtures, even took down the nice light fixtures I'd bought to replace the old ones. Watching them strip the place was oddly satisfying. With every item they removed, I felt a bit of my anger transform into something else, not exactly happiness, but definitely satisfaction. The laminate flooring took them the longest. They had to pull it up piece by piece, but I'd kept the original receipt, so I knew exactly what I'd paid for it. Every plank was mine. That night, I called a moving company. They came and loaded up all my furniture, all the appliances, all the flooring materials, everything. Sophia met me at Ricardo's house with the keys, and we spent the night moving everything in. "This is a lot," Sophia said as we watched the movers haul in my fridge. "Yeah, well, I've been living there for 5 years," I said. "I bought everything in that place." When we were done, I took the apartment keys and put them in an envelope. I wrote a short note. "I've moved out as you asked. The apartment is yours now." I sent it by courier to my parents' house. The next morning, my phone started ringing at 7 a.m. It was my mother, then my father, then Pablo, calling over and over again. I let it go to voicemail for a few hours. Then the text messages started coming in. "You had no right to do this. We're going to call the police. You can't just destroy our property. You're going to pay for this." Finally, around noon, I answered when my mother called. "Marta, what the hell did you do?" she shouted as soon as I picked up. "I moved out like you asked," I said calmly. "You destroyed the apartment. You took everything, the outlets, the plumbing, the floors. It's completely empty." "I took what belonged to me," I said. "I bought all those things with my own money. I have the receipts to prove it." "You're being vindictive. This is so petty." "We could have you arrested." "Go ahead," I said. "Call the police. Tell them I took my own property when I moved out. I'm sure they'll be very interested to hear how you conned me out of 30,000 euros and then kicked me out with 2 days' notice." There was silence on the other end of the line. "Marta, you shouldn't have done this," my mother said finally, her voice quieter. "Look, we can work something out. Maybe we can count that 30,000 euros as a wedding gift for Pablo." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. A wedding gift. They were trying to retroactively justify stealing my money by calling it a gift for my brother. "You're all liars," I said. "You lied to me, used me, and threw me away when it suited you, so I'm treating you exactly how you deserve to be treated. Marta, please. Oh, and Mom, you haven't seen anything yet. I've got another surprise for you." Then I hung up. The next morning, I called a towing company. I had one more card to play, and I was going to enjoy every minute of it. "I need you to pick up a car from this address," I told them, giving them my parents' house number. "It's a blue Honda Civic, license plate KM4392. I'm the legal owner, and I have all the paperwork to prove it." The car was something I'd almost forgotten about in all this mess. 3 years ago, I'd been driving it regularly, but when my parents started having money troubles, they asked if they could borrow it temporarily while they sorted out their transportation situation. "We'll have our own car soon," my father had promised. "We just need something to get to work for a few months." That was 3 years ago. I bought a new car and I let them keep using the Honda. I was still paying the insurance, I was still the legal owner, but I'd basically given it to them. Another one of my many generous gestures they'd apparently forgotten. Well, if they wanted to play the game of what's yours is mine, I could play that game too. The tow truck driver called me an hour later. "Ma'am, I've got your car." There was an older couple who came out yelling about it, but I showed them the paperwork. They couldn't do anything. "Perfect," I said. "Bring it to this address." I gave him Ricardo's house number. 15 minutes after the car arrived, my phone started blowing up with calls again. I didn't answer any of them, but the text messages were hilarious. "You can't just steal our car. We need that car for work. We don't have money for another car. You're being a horrible person. My brother sent the best one. You're a complete bitch. Don't even bother coming to my wedding. That one made me laugh out loud. I blocked all their numbers after that. I was done listening to their complaints. 3 weeks later, I put the Honda up for sale. It was in great condition, only about 60,000 km, and I'd kept up with all the maintenance. I listed it for €12,000, which was a fair price for a 3-year-old car. It sold in a week. When I deposited that check, I smiled for the first time in months. €12,000 wasn't the €30,000 they stolen from me, but it was something. It was a start. About 2 weeks after that, I got a call from Sarah. I recognized her number immediately since we'd kept in touch over the years and texted fairly regularly. "Hey, Sarah," I said, surprised to hear from her. "What's up? Marta, I really need to talk to you. Can we meet somewhere?" We met at a cafe in the city center. Sarah looked tired, stressed, not at all like the radiant bride-to-be I'd seen at the engagement party. "Your parents told me everything," she said as soon as we sat down, "about what happened with the apartment. They're blaming you for everything, saying you're being vindictive and trying to destroy their family." I raised an eyebrow. "And what did Pablo say?" Sarah's face darkened. "He completely agreed with them. He called you greedy and vindictive. He said you were just trying to cause trouble because you were jealous of our relationship. And what do you think about all this, Sarah?" "I knew you were living in your parents' apartment. I've been there to visit plenty of times over the years, but I had no idea you paid €30,000 to save it from foreclosure. I had no idea you renovated the whole place with your own money, that you'd been paying rent all these years." "Well, now you know," I said. "I can't marry him," Sarah said suddenly. "I can't marry into a family that would do something like this. And Pablo, the way he talked about you, his own sister, it disgusted me." I looked at her carefully. "Sarah, you need to make your own decision about this. Don't let my situation influence what you want to do with your life. It's not just your situation," she said. "It's how they all handled it. Your parents lied to you, stole from you, and then acted like you were the problem. And Pablo just went along with it. He didn't even try to make it right." "No, he didn't," I agreed. I started to think of Pablo's broken engagement as a bonus. I didn't plan for that to happen, but I'm not sorry it did. Sarah deserved better than marrying into a family of liars and thieves. And Pablo deserved to lose something he cared about, just like I did. I'm angry. No, not really anymore. I'm disappointed, sure. It hurts how easily they discarded me, but mostly I'm relieved to be free of them. They can keep their lies, their favoritism, their games. I have my own life to build now, and I'm going to make sure it's a good one. Sarah left after that, and I haven't heard from her since. But about a month later, my Aunt Carmen called me. "Marta, I thought you should know," she said. "Sarah broke up with Pablo. The wedding's off." "Really?" "Yeah, really. She called off the engagement last week. Your parents and Pablo are furious. They're blaming you, saying you poisoned her against them." "Of course they are," I said. "God forbid they take responsibility for their own actions." "How are you doing, sweetheart?" Carmen asked. "Are you okay?" "I'm actually doing great," I said, and I meant it. "I'm living in a nice house, no rent. I'm saving money faster than I ever have, and I don't have to deal with their drama anymore." "I'm glad for you," Carmen said. "I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself." That conversation was 6 months ago. I'm still living in Ricardo's house. I keep it clean and pay the utilities. Sophia says her brother is happy in Europe and has no plans to come back anytime soon, so I can stay as long as I need. I've been saving money like crazy. With no rent payments, I can save almost double what I used to. I've already saved enough for a down payment on my own place, and I'm looking at apartments in a nice part of the city. My parents and Pablo have tried to contact me through other relatives a few times, but I've made it clear I'm not interested in reconciliation. They made their choice when they decided to lie to me and steal from me. I've made mine. I miss having a family sometimes, but I don't miss the constant feeling of being second best. I don't miss being used and manipulated. I don't miss being treated like I don't matter.